I've been thinking a lot about spears, and I'll link to some of the videos that many of my favorite YouTubers have made concerning spears, but to sum up that discussion, spears are underrepresented, polearms in general, underrepresented and underappreciated in books, movies, video games, tabletop role-playing games, in the fantasy genre in general, compared to how effective, widespread, and prominent they were throughout history on every continent on the battlefield. Spears were a primary weapon, swords, which we see all of our heroes using primarily. Swords were a sidearm, as with maces, axes, etc. But why I'm making a video about spears is actually because of something Shad said in a recent video.
About the impracticalities and how unrealistic it is in Mount and Blade, where you have spears and polearms holstered on your back. Never seen a belt attachment like that, though. That is a challenge I might want to take up.
And I thought, that's a challenge I'd really like to take up. So I searched around, surely someone's thought of this. How do you carry a spear on your back? And I didn't find much. I didn't find any videos really. So that is what I set out to do, is answer the question and answer the challenge. How might you carry a spear on your back? And why might you want to? Now, it's funny, actually, that he mentions video games that try to tackle this issue about how do you sheath a polearm. I remember playing Fallout 3 for the first time and picking up the pool cue and sheathing it, on my back, just stuck there, floating. And it was pretty hilarious. And I figured that's probably why a lot of video games don't have polearms in them, is because they're maybe awkward mechanically to deal with and to account for. Skyrim doesn't have spears in it, which I think is kind of tragic. They would be awesome in that setting. Yeah, well, anyway, spears, they'd be in all kinds of medieval fantasy video games where often they go ignored. But actually, Skyrim does have staves, which is just a spear without a point at the end. And when you sheath a staff, vanishes into hammer space. And actually, speaking of video games and spears being underrepresented, I was exposed to many spears because I was an avid fan of the Dynasty Warriors series. How can you watch something like that and not just want to be a spearman? And also the Samurai Warrior series, a series by the same company. These games take place in historical China and Japan, albeit they're not very realistic depictions in many ways. In Samurai Warriors, there's a character named Toshiie Maeda who carries 2 spears and an X across his back, as well as a sword. That's maybe a whole next level to the challenge of how to carry a spear on your back that maybe I'll tackle someday. Well, the question that goes along with that then, as you think about it, is, well, why might you want to? On a battlefield, maybe there's not a whole lot of reason to carry a spear on your back because it's in your hands, pointed at the enemy. And if you need to lose it for some reason to draw your sidearm, you can probably just toss it. And if you need it again, I have never been on a medieval battlefield, but I would guess there might be no shortage lying around on the ground. Maybe you pick up a dead comrade. Maybe you pick up a fallen comrade spear. Maybe you take up a fallen enemy spear. And if you fall, let your friend pick up your spear. Pay it forward. When it comes to adventuring, say you're going on an adventure and you want to take a spear with you. Well, how long is the adventure? How long are you going to be gone? What other gear are you taking with you? Why might you want to carry a spear on your back instead of just carrying it in your hand? Because honestly, spears, they're just pointy walking sticks, and traveling with them can be fun and effective. You can lean on them, rest on them. They'll help you get over various jagged terrain. You can use them as a pole vault. And one thing I kind of guess is that if you need to get to a certain area where holding a spear is for whatever reason inconvenient, just toss it to the area you're trying to get to and then pick it up on the other side. Oh, and another character that from my childhood that I think is really cool who uses spears that I haven't really heard anyone else talk about, it's the Deltora Quest series, specifically a series that came after that called Dragons of Deltora. There's a character named Lindybeige who's described as carrying many spears, and she absolutely uses them throughout the book. The author never describes how she carries all those spears, so that's another maybe future challenge, the Lindybeige challenge. She's a really cool character. She's just tall and strong, has a shaved head, and a cool design like painted on it to ward off dragon attacks from above. Pretty interesting. Check it out. So as far as thinking about carrying a spear on your back, how would I do that? Well, there's one obvious way that stands out to me, which is just make a sling for it, like you'd see on a rifle. And actually, there is a character, pretty famous one, who does this. It's Rey from Star Wars. She has a sling on her staff. And I can't remember if it shows her wearing it on her back. I didn't want to rewatch it to find out. But yeah, that seems like the most simple solution to me. As far as how to tie the sling on, there could be a lot of different ways, a lot of different materials you'd want to use. And then there were some other, I was trying to think of, well, obviously, what if you could, I don't think there's anything like this, and I wonder how it would work, but almost like a tent pole, something that you pull out, if there was a way to collapse your spear like a spyglass. If someone wants to take on that challenge, go ahead and do it, and link to, don't worry about it. Just anyway, so the sling I made, really simple, really basic material that probably I assume anyone could have found and tied on in just a matter of minutes. It was super easy, and we will go over what I did and how I did it in detail later. I made this spear too because I thought if I'm going to take on the challenge of carrying a spear on my back, I wanted to take on the challenge of making one in the first place. And it is, well... So let's see how it holds up on an adventure. Well, we are here in the Black Forest in Germany. Just kidding, it's Minnesota in November. This is stunning. Me and my friend Alec, who's holding the camera, we do literally feel like we are in a medieval fantasy world on an adventure. We saw some deer run through. Wish some goblins would show up. It just feels right. This fills me with so much life. But anyway, I'm here to talk about the spear and adventuring with one, and can you carry it on your back? So here is what I came up with. It is hempen cord. At least I think it's hemp cord. I bought it from Hobby Lobby a while ago, and I don't know where the label went, but I'm pretty sure it's hemp. And it comes in a huge spool. It's very cheap. And I don't know, I mean, I'm pretty sure hemp is one of the common materials that people in actual medieval times used to make rope. And at least in D&D, if you're an adventurer, you come with 50 feet of hempen rope. So there's no shortage. There's probably a lot of different ways you could attach some kind of sling to a spear. Maybe you have little like hook and eye system, or just you have straps with a leather strap. The nice thing about rope is that you can just tie it in a lot of different kinds of ways. The way I tied this and came up with was just, I could see it in my head, and I kind of just did it. I'm not a sailor. I don't know a whole lot about knots. Basically, I just looped rope around and then kind of like made a line of rope and then wrapped really tightly around that, and then it's coming out and it's tied up at the top. And then it's in the opposite direction at the bottom, so when this thing gets pulled on, there's a lot of just tension to kind of keep it taut. But anyway, why don't I throw it over my back and let's see how it works. So the cool thing is with a rope, again, however much you want, you can change it, customize it, shorten it, lengthen it to suit your needs. I can basically just pull or push down and slide these knots to change sort of the situation of the spear on my back and the tightness. So right now, the way I have it here, there's that much sticking up on that end, and there's that much sticking out below me. If I want to alter that, oh, okay. Slidey slide, slidey slide. Okay, so now there's a lot more sticking up on top than on the bottom, which, so we're in a forest, a pretty widely spaced forest, so, running through the trees, maybe don't have to worry so much about hitting the spear on things, because basically my fear was that a spear is it's such a long tool that
the problems are going to come into hitting things. Right when we were about to start filming, I had a situation where it had started to slip, and I just kind of turned like this and almost slashed my cameraman around across his face. But he is very dexterous and dodged it. This is a 7-foot roughly spear. It's a little longer than 7 foot. How convenient carrying a spear on your back will change depending on how tall it is. If you're one of those Swiss pikemen that has a 15-foot long spear, this probably just ain't gonna work. I don't know, but nothing's impossible. Try it, do it. If you have a shorter spear, it's gonna be easier to carry it across your back. You're gonna have less extraneous space. But then the shorter your spear gets, obviously, the less value it has in being a spear, which the best thing about a spear is your reach. But this is about 7 foot. I guess most battlefield spears were between 6 and 8 feet, from what I remember. And yeah, let's go on an adventure. Well, that was a biff. So I'm going to adventure properly now. That's like the great thing about this theory. If you're crawling down, you know, kind of balancing yourself, obviously. A third leg. So why doesn't Gandalf just have a spear at the end of his staff? But if for whatever reason you're just like, I'm tired of carrying this, away it goes. And I do foresee, and I've got a shield down there, maybe I'll pull it out later, that if you have the spear at your back, you can switch to the sword and shield, put the sword away, whip the spear out. That wasn't very graceful. And now you've got your spear and shield, like I said. Anyway, back to the adventure. This is really fun. It actually feels not bad at all. Oh, look. Hey, I made it through. I thought I was gonna hit. See, if it hits a tree or something, it just, you know, kind of corrects itself. There's a lot of leverage. Pretty. The spear is so dense compared to a lot of this thin bracken that it kind of just plows through. And the way that my sling is, it's doing a good job, I would guess, of aligning itself more straight up and down. Oh, and another thing, of course, I could be doing is just having it over one shoulder, like this. Other cool thing about the way this rope is attached and like how non-permanent and temporary and customizable it is. If I don't want it on anymore, if I think it's gonna get in the way in combat, like, oh no, there's goblins coming over this hill, I'm worried that this is gonna get in the way, I just slide it off and I drop it. Well, you pick it up off the ground again, just tie it on later. But it isn't that obnoxious to have this rope on the spear. I don't feel like it's getting in the way in any meaningful way, and you can adjust where you want it. Is this bad? Here's my adventuring bedroll, and let's say I've rolled up a lot of my provisions and stuff inside of that. You know, we've all seen the image of like Huck Finn with the stick and the sack hanging from it. You could probably do that with a spear. And I hear that, you know, wearing the bow with the string maybe isn't the best idea for carrying a bow. I don't know how often it was done. It works technically, so I'm just doing that for now. I've got my spear, so yeah, right now I've got a bow a sword, a knife, my provisions, flint and steel, even got my ale mug for when I stop off at the tavern and I get the 10 copper discount. Dust it. I do feel like quite the adventure right now. And I'm not even, and like right now I'm not even annoyed that much by like how much I have on my back. If I was walking for a long time, maybe. I could even foresee up to a point, if I had a strap for the shield, I could have the shield over the spear or vice versa. Actually, something that would maybe be kind of cool is if the shield had like straps and I could sort of attach and tighten it and then sling them maybe both as a unit. As a little Viking Zulu hybrid. Anyway, so I'm an adventurer and I've got all my favorite weapons, minus an axe. I wish I had an axe. Yeah, well, I mean, that proves it works. It's fun. It looks cool. It feels good. Feels cool. And now, to prove it, my friend Saint Niklaus is going to carry the spear on his back.
It actually does feel a lot sturdier than I thought it was gonna. I could totally see like modding it too for everyone's specifications. This easily could be like a belt. Fantasy could never have enough belts. I still have access to all the things that I need.
It actually does look super dope. The silhouette is awesome.
And like last resort, I can just hold this and just be some kind of demented General Grievous. Alright, see how handles this. Oh yeah, going right through. And if I hear something, I can get my sword with it. No. False alarm. Not a false alarm, now I'm Gandalf.
Yes!
Chuck it. Yeah. I don't know, I'd rate it pretty well.
I love the holidays. Some final thoughts. There's probably a lot more experimenting that we could have done out in the woods in retrospect after reviewing the footage, but it got cold, and I just really felt like, even though we weren't out there very long, that the system I had concocted worked. It felt great and seemed great, and I would love to go on a long, proper adventure. I've never made a YouTube video before, and I've never edited a video before. I don't know, something just happened with this one where I finally took that step over, that leap across the hurdle, and just did it. And if it's awful, please let me know, because you have a right to express your opinion, and I would love it. If you enjoyed it or found it at all interesting, let me point you towards some people who have been doing this a lot longer and are a lot more brilliant than I am. And that would be Skallagrim, Metatron, Scholagladiatoria, Lindybeige, and my #1 favorite, Shadiversity. And he's actually the first medieval fantasy YouTuber who the people who go in depth on all that nerdy stuff that I went looking for, because I just was sitting in my car one day and thought, I love castles and I know nothing about them. So I YouTubed castles. Shad came up. I've been a fan ever since, for a couple years now. The second coolest thing to ever happen to me after getting married was to audition for a short film adaptation of Shad's novel, which was already an amazing thing that this YouTuber I loved so much had accomplished his own dream of producing a novel. And then he asked his fans to audition to play the main character from that novel. And I thought, well, that's one of those things that's never gonna happen. And I got the part. I don't think I'll ever fully process that. And I cannot wait to start shooting it. There's a lot of pre-production that's been going on. COVID has put a hamper on things because there's a lot of people coming in from different countries, or who need to come in from different countries. Anyway, I can't wait to get started on that. Meanwhile, you can look up the channel Productions Diratia. Those are the people who are going to be making the film, and they're doing a lot of other stuff on the side in the meantime. But Shad, yeah, like him, subscribe to him, love him, and buy his book, Shadow of the Conqueror. It's awesome. It's really dark. It's really gritty. Really fascinating, really interesting characters, and story. Anyway, I hope you liked this video about Spears. Summit. Rude and St. Paul. That's where I live. Great beer, great city.